Welcome to State of the State, the monthly roundup of policy and research for the state of Michigan, brought to you by the Institute for Public Policy and Social Research at Michigan State University, Russ White, and our friends at MSU Radio Studios. I'm Arnold Weinfeld, Associate Director for the Institute. Joining me are my co-hosts, Institute Director Dr. Mac Grossman and economist Dr. Charlie Ballard. Well, gentlemen, a lot to talk about, a lot been going on since we last met. Let's start with the home front, as they say. And Matt, you like to say how politics is nationalized these days, and certainly that's bleeding over to the policy as President Trump instituted tariffs on Canada and Mexico this week, but now has backed off on specifically the automotive pieces. Charlie, we'll get to you in a second, let you think about the economics of all that. But Matt, the UAW actually today I saw came out in support of it. What are the politics of this as far as the president's concerned?
Well, this is the kind of policy making that Trump loves. He can do it on his own, and then he can have people beg for exemptions and award those on his own. And that is what he is trying to do. That said, it still depends on the actual economic and market effects, and they are not very positive so far. So he likes to make the threats, likes to have the people kowtowing to him, but that doesn't mean that it is going to be successful in the long run.
And what do we make of the politics of the UAW? I'm reminded that they were never really supporters of NAFTA, going back to the Clinton administration. They feel that and other free trade agreements have bled jobs over the years. Is this a good move on the leadership's part at the UAW, given that some would say they were crosshairs anyway with their members during the election?
It's hard to say what the actual policy effects will be because, there's going to be exemptions built in. It may not last more than a few months. They have to consider just trying to stay on the president's good side for the start, just like all of the other interest groups. So I don't know that in the short term it's going to be a disaster, but I think certainly the auto industry is very dependent on trade with Mexico and Canada. And so I think starting a trade war with those two countries is probably not going to be, in the end, good politics or policy for anyone.
Well, of course, we'll get to the narrative, but apparently this isn't a trade war, it's a drug war, but we can talk about that later. Charlie, let's get to the economics of all this.
Well, that is actually due to the politics, due to the policy text. He can impose these tariffs on the basis of things like emergencies due to drugs. So that's why you're hearing a lot about fentanyl, even though it's a fairly minor issue with Canada.
The amount of fentanyl that's estimated to come into the United States from Mexico is 500 times as large as the amount coming in from Canada. But yeah, you're right about the economics and the politics, which are intimately intertwined. 30 years ago, despite the fact that Ross Perot said it would lead to a giant sucking sound, and many union members were opposed, we did engage in the NAFTA agreement. And that led to a situation where the auto industry, the U.S. auto industry is closely intertwined with Canada and Mexico, and especially here in Michigan with our close border with Ontario, where we are one of the ones who stand to lose the most from the tariffs that have been imposed and now temporarily taken back. Now, they've been temporarily taken back for the auto sector, but not for everybody. But for us in particular here in Michigan, the auto sector is a very big part of the picture. So if we can get an exemption for the auto industry, that makes this much less painful for Michigan than it would otherwise have been. I read the statements from the Detroit three automakers this morning in response to the temporary reprieve. And I believe Ford started with, "We appreciate President Trump." And GM and Stellantis started with, "We thank President Trump." echoing what Matt said, an awful lot of this is about the president likes people to come hat in hand. He threatens something that's damaging. And then we saw 8 years ago with the tariffs on China that Tim Cook of Apple Computer came hat in hand to the president and was able to get exemptions for iPhones. I think it remains to be seen how much of that there will be. There is still, if we have only an exemption for the automakers, these tariffs still are damaging to the U.S. economy, damaging to American consumers and businesses.
Well, certainly to consumers and certainly to the agricultural community. As I recall, during the first Trump presidency, there were tariffs, and we had to bail out soybean farmers, as I recall, at the end of the day. So, how are the markets reacting to this right now, Charlie? What are you seeing out there in terms of the markets?
Well, the Tuesday and Wednesday market reaction. The Tuesday market reaction was very, very negative. Major losses on the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the other big market indicators. Wednesday, not a whole lot better. The markets have not yet opened on Thursday morning as we speak, so it remains to be seen. But I think the fact that we have at least temporarily backed away from the auto industry tariffs, that will soften the blow in the financial markets, just like happened a month ago when there was a 1 month reprieve for the tariffs generally.
So, Matt, let's get back to the politics of all this a little bit in terms of not just President Trump, but maybe congressional Republicans who hold a very slim majority in the House. Right now, surveys and polls being taken seem to indicate that those folks who voted for President Trump are still right behind them. Of course, we're just, I don't know, 6 weeks into this presidency. So aside from the daily chaos of announcements and executive orders, the impact of these policies really hasn't been felt except by those federal workers who are being laid off. Long term, should these tariffs and other policies lead to continued economic stress on part of consumers, as Charlie just noted, what do you think is the president's out in all this?
We're nearly halfway through the first 100 days, so not very far into the administration. And the president was able to go to speak to Congress and tout that quite a few things had been done in the administration on its own. And really did not ask for a ton from Congress compared to other presidential addresses, because he's trying to do a lot within the administration and have Congress ratify it later, which is a strange twist in American policymaking. But not all the rules have changed. So, for example, one rule is that presidents begin with a honeymoon, but their presidential approval goes down over time. And that's already happening. In fact, the rate of decline in the president's approval is faster than normal. So the action is not necessarily leading to positives. We do take a couple months off from election season, but only a couple. We know that we're already into the next Michigan election, but the first major tests of the new president's term are the Virginia and New Jersey elections that take place in the off cycle in the first year, this November. And Virginia elections are probably not going to look great for Republicans, considering that is where federal workers are most concentrated and the people who are feeling the brunt of these layoffs and restructurings. So I don't anticipate that rule is going to change either, which is that presidents usually lose a share for their party in those Virginia and New Jersey elections.
So we've got the tariffs. Next up is the reconciliation bill to try and keep the government running.
Well, it's not. The reconciliation is the slightly longer term process that they are trying to do before the end of the fiscal year. But actually, next up is just the continuing resolution to keep the government open in mid-March. Has to be passed by March 14th to keep the government open. Then we'll have the debt ceiling likely to be expiring in midsummer. Then we'll have the reconciliation deadline. So a lot of deadline, and then of course the tax cuts expire at the end of the year. So we'll have sort of 4 fiscal deadlines here where Congress, although it has been able to sort of stay in the background of presidential action, will not be able to stay there forever. They will have to actually put their names on these changes.
Well, and speaking of that particular process, it was reported this morning that there is no way they can meet their budget targets without cutting Medicaid and Medicare. And while the president has said hands off on Medicare, it seems as if congressional Republicans right now are targeting big cuts in Medicaid in order to help meet some of their budget targets, which is shrinking services, shrinking programs in order to fuel a large tax cut.
Everybody claims that they're just cutting waste, fraud, and abuse and they want to keep benefits going. But this president has taken it to a whole new level, claiming that vast swaths of the federal government fall into that category of waste. And what that means is that, they're cutting people who work for the Social Security Administration, claiming that that's not cutting Social Security benefits. But wait times are up. Difficulty getting services is going up. They're planning to cut large numbers of people from the Veterans Affairs Administration. They say they're not cutting veterans benefits, but obviously the quality of those benefits will deteriorate. And for example, Tom Barrett, the newly elected swing congressman, one of the first things that really got him speaking out against the Trump administration actions was these cuts to veteran affairs.
The cuts to veteran affairs. It's not just coming from. This is not being just broadcast by news organizations that Trump would call fake news outlets. Fox News this morning had a story about the 80,000, perhaps as many as 80,000 folks in the Veterans Affairs Administration who would be cut. And even I want to echo what Matt said, even if you don't cut the explicit benefits that go directly to a veteran, a paycheck of some sort. There are a lot of people who work for Veterans Affairs Administration who are in suicide prevention programs, who work with disabled veterans in a variety of ways, who work with those with PTSD. And if you take away those folks, the safety net behind the men and women who served our country, it gets weaker, and that will lead to harm.
Yeah. Now, Matt, you mentioned that Trump's approval ratings are dropping faster than normal in this particular honeymoon period. But getting back to Charlie's point, and the point that I'd like to make is that until Americans feel these cuts in personnel, in their pocketbooks, or in services, they seem to be totally fine. And many of them seem to be fine with the cuts that the president and Mr. Musk are making through Doge right now. That there's too many people working for the federal government. So long as we don't cut programs and services, we're fine with you laying off people. And until it hits home, which may not happen until later this spring. For instance, if commodity prices rise because of the tariffs, or the next phone I buy, the next computer I buy price rises because of the tariffs, that people are going to be feeling it. So the harm will already be done by the time people are feeling it.
Well, there's reactions that come from direct policy impacts. There's also the reactions that come from news coverage and real changes in policy. For example, what Charlie mentioned, there has been news coverage of these cuts to Veterans Affairs, and they are unpopular. So cuts to general government and administration are popular when phrased in those terms, but once you get down to these specific programs, they're unpopular. Musk's popularity is also going down and lower than Trump's. So I don't think that this is necessarily a successful popular initiative. I think it's just acting fast. I think the reason they're acting fast isn't really about the public. It's about the history of this, which is that it's better to do as much cutting as you can before even you get your own people in place at those agencies, because they tend to want to protect their agency and turf once they get in there. So they've acted fast. They've tried to do everything across the board. They're winning some court cases, but losing a whole lot more. And the public doesn't seem all that positive about the actions to me. They are positive about reducing waste, and they're positive about overall reductions in the size of government, but not when it targets programs that they know.
It is still very early. President Trump came to office only, 7 weeks ago. And we have been involved with the State of the State survey, which took the pulse of folks. And we've looked at lots and lots of public opinion surveys. And it's always true that early on there's a honeymoon. I think what we can expect, or what I think we'll see going forward, is there are a lot of folks who were against President Trump from the get-go, and they will continue to be. And then his most ardent supporters will, I think, support him no matter what. And the question is really what happens to the swing voters, the folks in between, the independents and the not diehard Democrats or diehard Republicans. And he's losing some support among those people. How large that will be depends, as Matt says, on exactly what happens going forward. And the biggest thing that I see is uncertainty. There is a tremendous amount of uncertainty has been injected into our political and economic system. For the longer term, as an economist, I know that businesses hate uncertainty. And that may have a negative effect on business confidence and business investment, but we really won't know that for at least several months. So there's a lot that just we don't know yet, and we'll have to see as the weeks and months pass.
Well, consumers also do not like uncertainty, and I believe I saw a statistic the other day where consumer confidence is way down. And so that's going to have a large impact moving forward as well. If consumers are going to start holding on to their dollars, fearful that these various cuts are going to impact their own pocketbooks, or the price of eggs isn't coming down anytime soon, or gas is going to go up, or whatever it might be, then that's going to have a severe impact on the economy as well.
The tariffs, unless they're really pulled back dramatically very quickly, and not just on the auto companies, they will have the effect of raising prices. The consumer price index will go up a little bit more than it had been. And then that brings another player into the fray, and that's the Federal Reserve, because they will have a difficult choice. They have already signaled that they're slowing down on the interest rate reductions that they had been doing last year. A further increase in the rate of inflation probably will make them even more cautious, unless this is sufficient to push the economy into a recession. And I just don't know whether that will happen, or if so, when. So the Fed is going to be watching all of this extremely carefully, but the tariffs have narrowed the range of possibilities for the Federal Reserve to act.
Let's bring it back to Michigan. Charlie, you just noted that those that have opposed President Trump are always going to oppose him, but yet Governor Whitmer, who was certainly no ally of President Trump in general, and certainly
that woman from Michigan.
That's exactly right. During that first term, she got quite the reputation of being antagonistic with the administration. That woman from Michigan, it's how she came to be known as Big Gretch, speaking out. And right now, maybe from a practical perspective, she has been very quiet in terms of the actions being taken at the federal level by the president and his administration. She's noted more than once that she's going to work with him where she can, and is just trying to move her way through. Matt, on the as to the Democratic response to all this, it seems to be all across the board that Democrats really have no coherent message or narrative at the federal level or even across the states when it comes to what the president is doing and its impact on the states.
Well, as you know, Alyssa Slotkin, our new senator, was chosen to respond to Trump's presidential address. Since that address went on for 2 hours, I don't know how many people actually saw Slotkin's response, but she did kind of embody, I think, where the Democratic leadership wants to be messaging, which is to say, Trump promised to lower prices and he hasn't done it. We're with him if he wants to get rid of waste, but not fire thousands of veterans. She and that national security is at stake, and Reagan would be rolling in his grave. So she was kind of hitting all of those points. But it's hard to compete with the spectacle, not only of Trump, but of the people who want to be showing that they're taking the lead in protesting him. So we had someone thrown out of the presidential address, a Democratic congressman. We had lots of protest signs. We have lots of people wanting to engage in kind of strong stands of resistance. So I think it's sort of clear where the Democratic messaging experts are saying things should be, but that doesn't mean that you can hold the party behind those messages because the base wants to see a big fight.
I think it's not just the base. I've had some conversations with a few folks, and it's pretty clear, as you say, that while leadership and the message makers are pushing one narrative, the members themselves in Congress and across the states are very split on where to go. In Congress, you have the Democratic Progressive Left, and you also have a new group called the New Dems, which are about bringing together moderate Democrats. Those groups are about split 50-50. And when you read the columnists and the pundits across the Democratic sphere, their opinions are all over the place. From James Carville saying, we ought to take a 60-day hold because it's all going to fall apart in 60 days, to others saying, we need to protest every day. So I don't think it seems to me right now that Democrats are indeed all over the place with their messaging, and until they have a more coherent message, as maybe Senator Slotkin noted, the public is not going to respond well to them, I don't think.
Well, and it's going to actually matter for policy too. It's not just messaging. We have this government shutdown deadline coming. Democrats want to show that they are fighting Musk and the cuts, but that's not something that's usually included in a continuing resolution. The Republicans don't want to do it. So we could have a government shutdown where each party is blaming each other, and Democrats are trying to message that it's the Republicans who are reducing, who are doing all of this damage to the federal government, but they are also the ones holding up a cleaner continuation of government spending, which they might not come out of looking that great. But Republicans are also in charge of all three branches, so maybe they'll get blamed for everything, and it doesn't matter as much what Democrats are engaged in. So it's not that those sides don't don't have a point, but you can clearly see the differences in the messages that the Democratic leadership wanted to deliver and the actions of the members on the floor.
And back here in Michigan, the governor has done her State of the State speech. Again, it was a lot of chest pounding on some of the initiatives that she's completed and had success with. But the big issue here right now throughout the budget session and the spring sessions, once again, is fixing the damn roads. And the governor has certainly reached her hand out to the Speaker of the House, even lauded Speaker Hall, saying that they are the only two that have put plans on the table. Where do you think that discussion all goes in terms of the legislative session?
Bet on policy and government. Your default should be the status quo. That the despite a lot of people saying something should be done, they don't agree on what should be done and how it should be paid for. So I'm still not seeing a ton of movement there.
Yeah, we in Michigan we're kind of a microcosm of the U.S. in general. We like public services. We just don't really like to pay for them very much. Arnold, if I may, I'd like to return to the substance of a couple of things that are
Sure.
that are on the chopping block at the federal level. Cuts to the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation. Those have, we're MSU people, and we know people at the University of Michigan and other universities. U of M has the most to lose from those cuts, and MSU has a lot to lose if they go through. But it's not just the local effect on Washtenaw County and Ingham County. It's that this kind of reduction in support for scientific endeavor has the real danger of abdicating a role that the United States has played for decades now, in that we have been the leader in scientific research, especially research into disease prevention and disease treatment. And I think that could, for the longer term, be a very, very unfortunate effect. Connected with that is the cuts to the U.S. Agency for International Development. Many people around MSU know the name John Hanna, president of MSU from 1941 to 1969, under whose presidency this university really grew from an agricultural college to a major research university. When he left MSU in 1969, where did he go? To be the leader of the U.S. Agency for International Development. We at MSU have had a very long and I think highly successful engagement with AID. And I have been on the ground in countries like Tanzania and Botswana, and I've seen with my own eyes some of the things that we've done, and those have saved lives and helped to improve the standard of living for people in poor countries. And those cuts, I think, are quite unfortunate, and I hope that some of that money will be restored.
Well, that gets back to a couple of issues there, Charlie. Number one is the philosophy of America's soft diplomacy over the decades in terms of USAID and helping other countries, juxtaposed against the America First platform of this president and the Republican Party right now. The piece about the medical research is well taken. As a matter of fact, the irony was noted of the president honoring the young 13-year-old who has a terminal illness, while at the same time cutting that research that you mentioned, that kind of cancer research. And like I said, until this all hits home personally for Americans across the country, like it is now for VA workers and others, I just don't know that many Americans care, to be honest with you. I'll just put it bluntly. Until it hits home with them, I just don't know that they give a damn. So until next time, that's all we have for this edition of State of the State. My thanks again to Russ White and MSU Radio Studios for the support of this program. Join us again next month on State of the State.